Good. Good afternoon to the small but hearty group here. I'm really delighted to talk with you today. I wanted to begin by saying that last week I rolled out my blueprint to take back our country. It is a list of what I think are the most important problems that we have to solve to take our country back from the career politicians who have hijacked it, slowed it down, and turned it into a bloated bureaucracy that only works now for the big, the powerful, the wealthy, and the well-connected. It is a strategy for us as citizens to work together to return this nation to what our founding fathers intended, a citizen government. Our government today doesn't belong to the people anymore. It does not serve the people. It is actually crushing the potential of the people of this nation. It is bloated, corrupt, and inept. The very character of our nation is threatened, and the world is becoming a more tragic and dangerous place because we are not leading. And it's this last issue that I want to talk about today. As part of my blueprint, my priority is to defeat ISIS and put America back in the leadership business. This is what we must do. ISIS is at our shores. They are now in our community centers, and their victory is body count. Frankly, maybe you are too, but I'm angry. I'm angry that this president and Hillary Clinton do not understand this threat and refuse to call it radical Islamic terrorism. I'm angry that Hillary Clinton dares to ask, what difference does it make how 4 Americans died in Benghazi? And then she tells us that we must empathize with our enemies. Mrs. Clinton, when the United States does not answer a purposeful terrorist attack on an American embassy with a purposeful and powerful response, the terrorists declare open season. When you blame a video, instead of telling the truth, you invite more terrorism and bloodshed. The truth is, as Secretary of State, Mrs. Clinton has gotten every single foreign policy challenge wrong, from the Russian reset to Libya to calling Bashar al-Assad a positive reformer in Syria. And Hillary Clinton also, along with Barack Obama, got Iraq wrong. I'm angry that they declared victory in 2011 in Iraq, abandoned all of our hard-won gains for political expediency and against all the advice of our military generals, and thus they left vast swaths of territory and too much weaponry to be gobbled up by ISIS. I'm also angry that President Obama unilaterally decides to accept thousands of Syrian refugees while his own administration admits we cannot determine their ties to terrorism, and then from the Philippines says that any of us who support more common sense solutions, like we can't have more come in unless we can vet them, that somehow we're providing the jihadis with a recruiting tool. Mostly, I think like most of you, I'm outraged because the murder and the mayhem and the danger and the tragedy that we see unfolding in Paris or Beirut or San Bernardino is the direct consequence of this administration's policies. You see, you cannot lead from behind. And Mrs. Clinton, President Obama, climate change is not our most pressing national security challenge. Our most pressing national security challenge is radical Islamic terrorism around the world and here at home, whether it's lone wolves or packs of wolves. ISIS is an evil. It must be confronted. It must be destroyed. Today, as we talk about technology and how to use it, I want to talk about a critical piece of our strategy to defeat ISIS and restore American leadership in the world: cybersecurity. Like too many other foreign policy priorities, President Obama and Hillary Clinton have refused to see what is right in front of them when it comes to cybersecurity. That the United States is woefully unprepared for cyber terrorism, that we are vulnerable, and that while we sit idly by, our enemies are building their capabilities, and they are consolidating power. Our strategy today for approaching cybersecurity is based on a document from 2011 that has not been updated, and that means it is out of date. Having operated in the tech world for decades, I can tell you if you wait 4 years to move in technology, you are already losing. Remember that in January of 2011, the first iPad was not even a year old. Snapchat didn't exist. Instagram was not even in our vocabulary. The fact that we haven't updated our security strategy, our cybersecurity strategy since then, is unconscionable. And meanwhile, our adversaries and our enemies have not been sitting idly by. In China, President Xi has made cybersecurity a central component of his regime, creating a centralized council on cybersecurity that he leads. He says that there is no national security without cybersecurity, and he is right. The Russian government has hacked the White House and the State Department, gaining access to very sensitive information about the president's schedule and emails. This summer, the Russians hacked into the Pentagon and accessed emails from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. If that doesn't alarm us, it should. Worse, our adversaries recognize this American weakness, and they are now working together to consolidate their power in the wake of our failures. In May, China and Russia signed an extensive cybersecurity pact in which they agreed that they will not hack each other's government systems and that they will work together to ensure effective censorship of their own people. And of course, it is not just governments that are working hard to advance a technological agenda that threatens the United States. ISIS is getting better and better at using encrypted communications to recruit and radicalize within our country, and encouraging those recruits to carry out attacks. Our own FBI director not only tells us that his FBI is now overwhelmed by the number of potential terrorists in this country, homegrown terrorists, but he also tells us that ISIS knows how to effectively make their recruits disappear online. ISIS, believe it or not, has established around-the-clock help desks to pass on all of this technological information and training along to other terrorists. Just hours before the Paris attacks began, and against all the evidence, President Obama declared ISIS contained and took a victory lap. And last night, he spoke from a podium in the Oval Office, but he offered no strategy. He offered no leadership. It was, I think, vintage Obama. This is not the JV team, Mr. President. They are not contained. They are learning where we are vulnerable, and they are exploiting our vulnerabilities. And of course, we are vulnerable. The former head of the U.S. military's Cyber Command, Keith Alexander, tells us that we are now woefully unprepared to handle an attack on our critical infrastructure, which could shut down our economy and people's day-to-day lives. The director of national intelligence admits that we have basically no U.S. cyber deterrence. It doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to settle for this level of ineptitude and dangerous incompetence. We are the world's leader in innovation, in entrepreneurship and technology. This country is the home of Silicon Valley, of Google, of the iPhone, of IBM, of Hewlett-Packard, of so many other incredible technology companies. And having led what we turned into the world's largest technology company, I know what it will take for America to lead in this realm. We have the talent, we have the capabilities, and so now we need a president in the White House who will work with the citizens of our nation to challenge those talents into solving one of the most urgent national security challenges of our time. The first thing we need to realize is that this battle will not be won in Washington, D.C. Right now, private sector companies can and should take the lead on cybersecurity, but the government continues to get in the way. We need to remove burdensome regulations that keep companies from fighting cyber attacks on their own, and we need to stop the government from turning those incidents into crime scenes that companies cannot touch. Encryption is an important tool, but the conversation going on in Washington is, frankly, missing the point. As I'm sure many of you have seen time and again, the political class constantly wants to dictate or legislate on a subject they really don't understand. They want to tell you that either we have to revamp the Patriot Act, a law that is now 14 years old. 14 years is several generations in technology, or there's nothing we can do. This is a false choice, because technology and innovation continue to move. I spent my career, as you know, in the technology industry, and I can recall Michael Hayden, then the director of the NSA, calling me after September 11th. He said he needed help, that our nation needed help. I was the chief executive of Hewlett-Packard at that time, and a tractor-trailer of HP product was heading to retailers in the D.C. area. After the call from General Hayden, I directed that we tell the driver to pull over. And from there, an NSA police car provided our driver with an armed escort to NSA headquarters in Fort Meade, Maryland. The point is, when it comes to protecting our national security, technology experts should be and can be our government's partner.